Definitely not Ralph Taylor. We're in a different country altogether. But look who we've got. The old man of Djuma in the form of Mvula. How cool is this? I haven't seen him in so long, and it's such a pleasure to be catching up with him. He looks good, actually. He's showing signs of age in the form of his ears, and he's gone a bit kind of sort of scarred on that muzzle and all those kind of things. But still, it's so good to see him. I haven't, like I say, seen him for a couple of months now, so I'm really happy to catch up with him again and to see him. He's always been one of my favorite leopards, and he was such an incredible leopard as a dominant male, and to see him still moving around in this area when everyone wrote him off over 2 years ago when Tingana and Anderson pushed him out is pretty phenomenal. The fact that he's still around absolutely surprises me, and particularly where he is. He's right in the center of Djuma. In fact, he's very close to where Thandi had the previous den, and so it's not really that ideal that he's moving around here, because obviously Thandi's cub is at risk from a male like this. Although at the end of the day, I think Mvula is not really looking to go and kill cubs and try and mate with females and take over territories at this stage. Probably find he's just passing through, but it's wonderful to see him nonetheless, and welcome to have him right on our doorstep once again. I don't think Tingana is going to be too happy about it, but it doesn't matter. It's still nice, like I say, to have him around. Now, he was walking and moving quite a bit, and he's now just gone on to a termite mound, and we know how much he loves termite mounds. He often sits here for long periods of time as he looks for things like warthogs and various other creatures that live inside there. And he's just kind of having a bit of a relax now. He was looking at some impalas that were in the distance, but it seems as though he's not too interested in them at this stage. Now, Scarlett, you're wondering how old Mvula is. So Mvula he must be 12 and a half, going on to, I suppose he'll start going on to 13 soon, which will be, that's about, I say 12 and a half is where he is at the moment. So he's going to have a long way to go until, well, he's not a long way to go, should I say, until he actually is really probably beyond his prime. He's, most male leopards in the Sabi Sands will only live to about 12, 13 years old, and he's already approaching that number. The thing is, though, is he still looks really good. His body condition is not bad at all, even though he's a bit scarred up and he's got tatty ears. His neck and his shoulders still look all right, and his teeth are okay, and as long as those are all right, then he should be okay to survive a little bit longer. The problem is there's going to be more and more pressure put on him by all of these other males in the area, and the more we get young males, the harder it's going to be for him to survive. The thing is about Mvula is he must be a very, very clever cat and a sly character, because for him to have done what he's done over the last 2 years and to evade Tingana and Anderson and all of these other dominant male leopards that have really been gunning for him. They've all come and pushed him out and were younger and fitter, and for him to have kind of snuck around in between them and them not to know that he's even been here is really quite something. So he's done incredibly well, and he's really done a good job of being able to kind of stay alive, not only stay alive, but actually thrive in these sections. And it's in testament to how he is as a leopard and how he kind of is able to operate and move around and find what he's looking for. The other interesting thing with him is his change in diet is very drastic. When I was here at Chitwa in 2012, I found that he would eat a lot of bigger animals, so you used to see him going after things like kudu, waterbuck. You used to see him going after young wildebeest, like what we were talking about earlier. And now, when all the kills that I've seen since I came back into this area have all been much smaller, so he's been going after things like porcupines and scrub hares and those kind of things, which is quite interesting. He's kind of going after now slower and sort of smaller animals as he's starting to get a little bit older. And this is what happens, is they start to regress a little bit and start to become animals that unfortunately just don't have the strength to go after big things. Now, it seems that Mvula is going to be fairly sleepy, and for now, the fact that he was moving and the fact that he was kind of looking around is probably good. I'm sure he will start get going again, especially if the sun comes out. But while we be patient and wait for our old man to start moving again, let's go back across to Steve and see what he's up to. I believe he's at Chitwa Dam and got all kinds of feathered friends around him. I am indeed, and the sun has come out now, which is pretty much baking, and he was fast asleep, but I think he's getting too hot, so I wouldn't be surprised he does begin to start moving again and maybe tries to find himself a little bit of shade to go and rest in. But now that we've kind of pulled up alongside of him, you can see that he's starting to show signs of age quite heavily. His body is not looking what it used to. So from the front he looks quite good, but if you look on his hips there, you can see that there's a lot of atrophy of that muscle, and that he's lost a lot of weight since the last time I saw him, and he's starting to look a little older and skinnier than he's looked before. So it's not really nice when you see that, but at the end of the day he has had a long innings, and it is a good age for a male leopard, so you can't grumble too much. And well, it also could change. He could get himself 3 or 4 impalas in a row and he'll be absolutely fine again for another couple of months. So hopefully that will be the case, but he's definitely a lot skinnier than the last time I saw him. He's dropped a lot of weight, particularly on those back legs area, and I'll be interested to see when he stands up whether or not he's very skinny, or if it's just kind of a angle that he's sitting that's making it look worse than it actually is. But I surmise that he's a little skinnier than we actually think. Either way though, he's still got a massive set of shoulders and neck on him. He's still a beautiful cat, and I was talking to VM now about his right ear area. It looks as though he's been looking for warthog piglets again. Mvula used to love warthog piglets. He used to go after them regularly. He's got lots of dust around the back side of his ears and his neck area. You can see it's all dirty in that section. So he's managed to somehow shove his head into some hole somewhere looking for some sort of food item. Like I say, he also goes after porcupines a lot. I've seen him going after aardvarks and various other creatures that live inside these mounds and burrows. It's not a uncommon thing to watch him do it, and even his tail looks all dusty as well. He's got kind of, the black is all covered in grey dust, so I don't know what he's been doing or where he's been up to, but it seems as though he's had some sort of fun diving into a hole somewhere. Now, like I say, I'm pretty sure he's getting hot. You can see his breathing has changed as well. He's starting to pant a little bit now. Mouth is open. He's kind of trying to just cool that body down a bit, and the sun is really blazing onto him full steam ahead. And so I think if he's going to move, it will be shortly. I'm pretty certain that he's going to try and find some shade somewhere. I doubt that he's just going to lie right out in the sun. It's never the most pleasant thing to do, but look at those beautiful eyes in this afternoon light. He still has incredible eyes, even though he's an older individual. His eyes are mesmerizing. They kind of that light color, much lighter than most of the other leopards that we see out here. And his lineage is kind of quite long. There's a few males that share the same traits that he's got, and it's why Tumba always is a bit of an enigma to me, because theoretically Mvula didn't mate with Tandi at that period, so that when Tumba was born, but Tumba has so many traits of Mvula, it's scary. He's got the big ears, he's got the light colored eyes, and his general shape of his face is very similar to that of Mvula and that of a lot of Mvula's offspring. So if you compare Tumba to Wabayiza and to Bahuti and some of the others, they all look very similar. So you see he's going to yawn now, and that's often a sign that he might stand up and go. You'll also notice he's got a broken right canine. Now that's been like that for many months. It's the first time I noticed it was right at the beginning of the year, but there we go, up he gets, and I'm pretty sure he's going to try and find himself some shade. So he is a little skinny. You can see he's not as bad as I actually thought when he was lying down. I thought he would be a lot skinnier than that, but he's got 1 or 2 little wounds on him, which is not ideal. He's got like a little cut on him. Are you going to lie right in front of the car? I can't even see him. He's somewhere in that section over there. Now, is he going to drink maybe? I'm not sure. I'm trying to just lean out the car to try and see. Hopefully I don't fall. The last time we did that, we had a bit of an issue, but at least VM can see him now. I just want him to see if he's going to settle before I reposition myself, but it looks as though he might decide to go and have a little bit of a drink of water. There's also a nice shady section under one of these trees, and so maybe that's where he's headed. But let's see, maybe if we just go back slightly, Vildi. So you can see he's been around vehicles for quite some time, has Mvula, and so it doesn't really stress him too much for us to kind of move a little bit. But I just want to try and give him a bit of space. It's never comfortable to be that close to a leopard, and especially when there's a little bit of shade that he's trying to find. You can see he's lying right next to some water. Right, now that he's down properly, now I can reposition nicely and we can get a better view of him. So we're just going to turn the car a little bit. There we go, Vim. That will be a lot easier. So he's found himself a small sliver of shade just on the edge of a mud wallow, and you can see why it's so tough to find leopards at the moment at this time of the year. We struggle a lot more because if you look how much water is in the bush here, and we were talking about it just now with Vim, is that there's very little sign of his tracks on the road, and so if you miss the tracks and he walks into a section like this, because of how dense it is and the fact that there is water here, it's going to make it really very difficult, to find him. You'd have to try and kind of find mud wallow to mud wallow, but he's definitely on the skinnier side, and that's very kind of him to have walked the way he did, to go and have a drink of water, because he's now given us a beautiful view of him lapping up that nice cool water from the side. Shame boy, are you hot? Yes, not surprised. He lay in the sun for quite some time before he decided to get up and move, and maybe in his younger days he would have moved a lot quicker, but when they're older like this, they do sometimes just sit and take it easy for a longer period, and then that body temperature goes up quite drastically, and they then have to obviously try and cool down. So water is great for him, and a little bit of shade there to drink from as well, which is perfect. So I'm pretty sure he's going to have a nice long drink before he'll flop down in the shade again and wait for it to get a bit cooler before he starts to try and look for a meal. He definitely will be looking for a meal at some point. Now if you look just above his left front leg, you'll see that there is a bit of a wound that is just on there. It's not a very big one, but right there in the middle there's a little kind of cut that's on that area. Now I believe my comms are not working, which is very true here, so we'll try and sort that out quickly. Let's have a look. Hold on, Louise, we have a pulled out earpiece. There we go. Now we're back in comms, so Louise can start talking to us again, which will be good. So he's probably going to find himself that shady section there, and he's going to lie down, I would imagine. It's a perfect spot for him to go. There we go, Louise, I can hear you now. Sorry, my earpiece pulled out when we repositioned the car, so that's why I couldn't hear you. First Lady Shah, you're wondering if Tingana knows that Mvula is hanging around. In all likely, probably he does know that there are males around. Whether he knows it's Mvula, I'm not quite sure. Tingana will know that there's pressure on him at the moment from multiple different males. He's got issues with this young male that's around. He's got a situation where he's got, Mvula, there's quarantine, there's Fasana, there's Tamba, so it's not just Mvula that's around, and Tingana knows that, so he's going to be moving around quite a lot to try and sort of figure out who it is and try and push them out. The thing about Mvula is he's very clever, is that he doesn't scent mark, he doesn't vocalize, he doesn't cause any kind of stir that would attract Tingana to that area and cause him to try and kind of chase after him. So he's clever in that he just sort of is like a ghost, and he just moves around in here without trying to attract too much attention to himself. But definitely if Tingana walked down the road now, he would have picked up Mvula's scent and then followed it to try and see where he is. But he's found himself a nice little shady spot. I don't think he's going to be up for much longer. I think he's probably going to go crashing down for a little nap, but I'll try and reposition to see if I can get a better view of him and exactly where he's sort of lying down. Hopefully we'll be able to see him nice and clearly. While I do that, and while I find a better spot to sit, let's go back across to Steve, who is taking a leaf out of Steph's book and he seems to be admiring some big tall trees. Well, no, not quite. Mvula is fast asleep, so very little excitement at this stage. The old man has walked quite a long way since you last saw us. He's walked long and hard, and of course now that it's time for you guys to come and see him walking, he's now flopped over and had a good nap. So now he's decided he's found himself a comfortable spot. This is where he's going to rest for a while longer, but like I say, we've walked almost to Philemon's Dip now, so he's come from Twin Dam side all the way through this block and kind of negotiate through that way, and has decided that this is where he's going to rest for now. I wonder if it's maybe because there's some sort of signs of holes in the ground here, so maybe there's warthogs or porcupines or something that he's picked up on that he's decided he's going to nap here. You can see there's a few holes there that he's lying very close to, and he kind of walked past it and then turned and came and lay back in this area. So I'm not sure if it's that or if it's just a nice cool spot. The thing is though, is when the sun is out, it is hitting him on the side, and so I wonder if he'll get hot again like he did on that termite mound and then start to move around and maybe start heading down towards sort of Philemon's Dip side itself, or even maybe up to Quarantine. If he goes up to Quarantine, well, we know that there's a number of wildebeest up there that he could potentially go after. Whether or not he's capable of bringing down a young wildebeest in his condition, I'm not quite sure. I would imagine he would be. I mean, he's still got a lot of power in those front legs, and when the adrenaline is pumping, he'll definitely be able to still run quite quickly and, be able to grab things. So I'm pretty sure he would go after those young ones, and so maybe he'll head up that way and get himself a meal. As much as I would want Footloose and them to survive, it would be also nice for Mvula to get himself a substantial meal at some point. It's definitely needed, and if he's going to survive this summer period, he's going to need to eat very, very well. What surprises me, though, is that I would have thought, given the amount of lambs and baby animals that we've had around, an old experienced male like this would have taken advantage of that, and that he would have been in slightly better condition than what he is right now. And suppose we are late in the birthing season now for things like impalas, and maybe this next wave of impala births that we will get, because remember, there's almost two sort of ruts within the impala population, and particularly this last year we had them rutting very late, all the way into June, July, which would mean that we would start to see another couple births around this sort of period, so January, February. So maybe he can take advantage of those and be able to get himself a good meal at some point. But he'll need a couple baby impalas to try and get some of that weight back on once again, because it's going to just keep getting worse the longer he doesn't eat, and so he's going to need to find some sort of food at some point. You'll find he'll also start regressing back to what we saw from Hosana when he was younger, is that he was eating terrapins and tortoises and monitor lizards. So you'll find Mvula will start going after those things just to try and get by until such time as he can get himself something slightly bigger, and he's probably going to start scavenging. So even if he comes across somebody like Tundi on a kill or Shadow on a kill, he might find that he'll scavenge from them and try and take it. And like what we saw with the wild dogs a few weeks ago with Noel, where he came running in to try and grab them. Right, well, he's still sleepy, he's still taking it very easy. There's a few flies bugging his ears, and the sun hopefully is going to come out again just now, which might drive him to start walking once again. If he does, though, it would be quite nice. It would be nice if he moves out into a slightly better spot than he's lying at the moment, because he's got a bit of a difficult visual. But while we sit here and wait, let's go back across to the Mara and Taylor with a beautiful view. Well, no, he seems to keep doing this to us. Every time you go away, he puts his head up, and every time you come back, he's fast asleep. So I don't know why he's in that mood, but that's the way it is. I think something just piqued his interest, and he was just looking around for a few minutes and back down to sleep at this stage. But I don't think he's going to be down all afternoon. I think we're going to see him starting to wake up. It's getting a lot cooler now, and definitely the sun is starting to kind of dip a little bit, and so hopefully that's going to mean that he's going to start waking up a little bit and start moving around and looking for some sort of food item. He's a cat that is interesting to follow. I've spent some really cool sightings following this guy. I once had a really cool sighting of him on Simambili, where we followed him around, very similar to this actually in the afternoon. He was looking very skinny. It was about a year and a half ago. He was looking skinny like this, and he didn't really look very good at all, and everyone kind of thought that was going to be the last of him. And we followed him around much the same, and he was walking and kind of flopping down and not really paying too much attention to what was going on. And he went and found a little pan where he started to drink. Next thing, he kind of ears perked up and pricked up a little bit, and he kind of went ambling off towards this termite mound, and then just bolted inside the hole of the termite mound, and there was much commotion, and next thing he emerged with a porcupine, and he was holding the porcupine in his mouth, and the porcupine was squealing and squirming, and he then was managed to kind of kill it and able to feed off it without getting any quills in his face or anything like that. It was actually quite amazing to watch. He just kind of dived in, and there was just sand everywhere, and like I say, this porcupine came out and was not very happy to be dragged out of its hole, that's for sure. And there must have been another one inside there, because once he killed that one, he didn't stop. He went back in and started excavating out, but he just, I don't think, could get to the other one, and then decided to come back out and start feeding off it. And surprisingly, it's amazing actually how much meat is on a porcupine. Everyone always kind of looks at a porcupine and thinks they're mostly quills, and yes, they are. I'd probably say that at least 70% of the body is hair and quills and those kind of things, but there's actually a surprising amount of meat on it. He fed off that porcupine for over a day, so he was still there the next morning and that afternoon, and then he finished it up. What I will say say though is a porcupine is a very, very stinky dead animal. So there's certain animals that smell, and they smell quite bad, and then there's other animals that are just on the super scale of stinky, and a porcupine is on the super scale. I think it's because it's got quite a lot of fat layers around those quills and sort of subcutaneous fat that's there, and it's just really stinks a lot. It's much like a hippo and an elephant in the way that they smell. They really are seriously pungent when they're dead. So it was pretty incredible to watch, though, how he went about it. And then from there, he just went on this streak of porcupine kills. We saw him in about the next 2 weeks. I think he had about 3 or 4 other porcupines. And then he managed to get himself a duiker, and he bounced back into perfect condition again. So even though he looks very skinny now, you'll be surprised how quickly these guys can bounce back when there's food available. So I'm hoping that this afternoon he does decide to do the same sort of thing and wander about, and maybe he gets lucky with finding something like that that's a fairly stationary target, and he can try and then get it out and get some sort of success and some food inside of him. But I definitely think we're going to see him trying to scavenge as well over the next little bit. I'm pretty sure if there's any carcasses that are around, he certainly will try, probably make an appearance, especially with the females, try chase them off and then try and get a meal out of it that way. Well, he's still an absolutely beautiful animal. I was just thinking about all the times that I've seen him and the hours that we've spent with him. He's probably provided some of my most favorite sightings. I remember the one time he saved me from, I had a streak when I was at Chitwa, which was an interesting one, because I started working at Chitwa and I was there for just over 2 years. And in that time, I had many guests, obviously, that came through, and I was able to find a leopard for every single guest in the entire time that I was at Chitwa. And then I got these one-night guests from Dubai who hated everything about safari. Why they came on a safari, I'm not quite sure. They just didn't like anything about it. They didn't like the heat, they didn't like the rain, they didn't like the fact that there were bugs, they didn't like the fact that the animals were not fed at certain times, that they could just go when they wanted to, and all kinds of other things. But anyway, that aside, it was an afternoon they came in and they hated everything, and they decided that they weren't going to stay at the lodge for the few days that they had booked in for, that they were going to leave the next morning immediately. But they wanted to go on a game drive, and they wanted to see every single animal under the sun in that afternoon game drive. And so obviously it was a little bit of a kind of finicky subject, and we thought, well, we'll try our very, very best to find as much as we can. And as we were about to go on a game drive, the storm came out of nowhere, and it absolutely came down. It was really lashing down. It was horrible to be out. You couldn't even see 2 meters in front. And so I asked them, do they want to still go? And they said to me that they did. And we left the lodge, and 5 minutes into the drive, they were telling me that they didn't want to go anymore, and that they were not tired of being wet, and that the animals must just come to the lodge and all of that. So anyway, we kind of went out. We managed to find 2 of the Majingalan male lions that were lounging about, and they were desperate to see a leopard. And unfortunately, there was no leopards about. There hadn't been for about sort of 24 hours. We hadn't seen any sign of a leopard, nothing. And I thought, well, these will be the first guests that I'll have that leave Chitwa without seeing a spotted cat. And we were just about to arrive back at the lodge, and lo and behold, there came Mvula, just walking out from the lodge itself, and positioned himself perfectly on a termite mound within the parking lot of the lodge. And we were able to sit there and kind of just watch this cat sprawled out from the comfort of the lodge itself, which was pretty cool. So he's got lots of very cool memories about this cat and what he's been up to. And like I say, I've had some of the most insane hunts with him as well. In fact, the best leopard kill I've seen has been with this particular individual, when he chased an impala, much like the 5 cheetah of the Masai Mara. He just kind of went flying out over an open area at Chitwa airstrip and ran there and caused absolute panic. And I don't think the impalas have ever been hunted by a leopard in that way, and they all just sort of panicked, and one ran straight into him, and he just grabbed it and managed to kill it. And then hyenas arrived, and he was trying to drag it up a tree, and as he jumped into the tree, he got kind of halfway up, and the hyena got the leg of the kill and was pulling it down, and the impala was still alive, and the hyena on one end and leopard on the other. It was just all very chaotic. And then I had a flat tire in amongst all of that as well. So it was a pretty cool sighting, and it was amazing just to watch him hunt in a completely different way to what we see from other leopards here in the Sabi Sands. So he was a very special leopard, and like I said, that's why I was very surprised this afternoon to hear that he's around, and very happy. And as much as I want to see all the other leopards that we get out here, he he's got not as much time left, and we don't get to see him regularly, so it's a very special thing to kind of see him again and reminisce about all of these amazing things that I've seen from this particular cat and the beauty that he has provided for so many people. And Virm and I were actually talking about it just now. I wonder how many times he's been photographed and how many photographs there are of Mvula floating around in the world, and how much happiness and sort of pleasure he's provided to so many people out there. Scarlett, you're wondering how close do leopards get to our camp? Well, in our camp, I haven't seen any leopards walk through the DRC yet, but in other camps that I've worked, so if we take Simbambili is one of the camps I worked at, Salahesh, she denned right in the camp underneath one of the decks of the spa, and so she used to see her walking, ambling around all over the place. And in fact, one morning we came down for coffee and we came down onto the front area of the lodge, and there she and Tiani were just lying, having a little look on the deck itself, and the guests were all taking photos of her. It was a bit of a surreal scene watching these two leopards. It almost looked like two house cats lying there. I've had Mvula at Chitwa many times, walking through that camp, walking into the office. I've seen him walking over the deck area. He once had, I was telling Viam earlier, he had a kudu kill on one of the decks of the rooms there. And he made an absolute mess, and not because of the fact that he was trying to, but he had this kill, and he then dragged it up onto the deck of the suite, and he then pulled it over the chairs and left blood and guts all over the chairs itself. He then decided that he needed to scent mark on every sort of bit of furniture that was out on that deck, and peed all over the cushions and everything else, and then took the carcass into a tree that was overhanging the swimming pool, so bits of bone and things that fell into the pool. It was a bit of a nightmare to actually clean it up, and it was funny because there was guests in that room that were there for 3 nights, the entire 3 nights that he was there, and that they couldn't use their deck, and they actually went to their travel agent and complained that there was a leopard outside and that they weren't able to swim or sit outside the whole time that they were there. You would think that they would have been quite happy to have had a leopard sitting outside their room every single day. They just woke up and there was Mvula lounging by the pool and having a little look at them, and they got some crazy footage of him just kind of sitting on the other side of glass, just looking at them and having a little drink from the pool. It was really a very, very cool sighting. So he's been around a lot. I've had Tandi all over Chitwa camp before. I've spoken about it before when she came into my room once, or twice actually. The first time was a lot deeper into my room than the second time. The second time she just came to the doorway and went. But so leopards are very frequently around the camp. Here at Djuma, Karula used to be always in and out of Weatela and Gallagher, and she used to be under the decks. In fact, she used to keep her cubs there fairly regularly. I know Induna and Mishu and Shivinzi and Shivambalana, both of them spent a lot of time around the camp itself. So, the leopards become quite at home with camps. So as soon as they're habituated and they realize that, people aren't too much of a threat, then you find that they actually aren't too sort of stressed about walking through camps at night and even during the day sometimes. So it is something that you have to be aware of and have to be a bit careful of at times. And particularly when you get leopards like this, older leopards will sometimes come into camps because there's the ability to go and try and get into bins and those kind of things. So Nadine, you're wondering if the leopard that appears on, I imagine you're watching on YouTube or Periscope with the SafariLive logo that's yawning, is that Mvula? No, it's not. It's one of his proposed offspring. So it is Quarantine that is busy yawning there, and so Quarantine, we think, is one of his offspring. It looks very much like Mvula, in fact, and so I would be surprised if it wasn't. But he now is dominant a little bit further to the east, and I'm sure we are going to get more and more views of Quarantine. I think that when there's this little changeover in the next baton is passed in terms of our male leopards, I think Quarantine's going to start pushing back towards his natal area, and we're going to see Hosanna going in the same kind of route towards where Quarantine went, and that sort of circular motion hopefully will play out. But we'll see. I mean, it's obviously dependent. Quarantine might like where he is now and not want to come here and leave a gap then for Hosanna or this new young male that's in the western sector, one of them to be around. But it's like I say, not him. Unfortunately, it would be nice if it was the old legend, and I would think it would be great to actually have all of the male leopards that we've seen on SafariLive since the beginning and see kind of portraits of all of them. But unfortunately, the way technology was and things, I don't think we have many good quality portrait photos of Mafufanyan and Jordan, well, the original Jordan, and then Yambilu Jordan. So there's a couple of ones that are missing, and then there was an old male. I'm not sure if any of you remember this. Maybe some of you that have been watching for a long time remember a really old male leopard that came through through a few times. I think he was seen twice on Djuma, and then he's seen a few times in the west, but he was very old, and he actually eventually ended up going all the way down to Lion Sands, and he disappeared down there. And he was quite famous because he climbed a tree in Londolozi, and he went up right to about 30 meters up and went and raided a fish eagle nest. So there's a video of him doing that. But those are the only sort of old male leopards that we've had, or older, more dominant male leopards that we've had on Djuma. But it would be really cool just to kind of put them all together and see what they all look like over the years. It would be, I think, a very nice little thing to see. Anyway, let's carry on sitting with Mvula. Be patient. We never know how many times we're going to get to see him more in his life, and so it's better just to sit here and enjoy as much as we can. Plus, there's not really much else going on, so there's nothing better than sitting with a leopard. Hopefully he'll get up and moving. But while we do that, let's go across to Steve, who I believe is doing his best impression of Mvula and is just chilling. Well, I don't think so just yet. I mean, we repositioned ourselves completely. We've come around to the other side of where we were parked to just try and get a better view of his face, and hopefully if he puts his head up, at least be able to see him. But you can see he's still very sleepy. I don't know if he's going to wake up anytime soon. I think maybe he's been moving quite a bit during the day, given that he was found walking on the road, and then we followed him all the way to this section. And also, you never know, maybe there's something that's underground here that he's just waiting for it to come out. So it could be that's why he's just having a rest. I don't know if he's going to be too active, but we'll see. There's another vehicle that's on its way to join us, and so maybe when they arrive, that might stimulate him just to poke his head up and have a little look around, and so we can see him. But you can see there that he definitely is in need of a meal, and you can see that there's that sort of atrophy around the hip area. It's a common thing to see on older leopards. I remember Safari and Mafufunyan, they both ended up looking a little bit like that, and it is sad to see it, but you'll be surprised. I mean they put it on quite quickly again, so once they have that sort of loss, if they just can get food, then you'll find they'll actually start to kind of put that muscle back on, and they tend to be okay. But eventually it's going to get to the point where he's just too old to actually do it. Now, Ellie, you want to know if he could eat some grubs or things like that. Well, he certainly could probably go after things like termites. While there's a lot of these winged termites around, they land on the ground, and he could lap those up, and it wouldn't actually be too much effort for him to do so. You'd be able to get some sort of nutrients out of that without expending a lot of energy. And I have seen leopards do it before out of just sort of, I think, more out of opportunity than anything else. But so you could go after that. In terms of grubs, no, I mean, they're not designed to try and dig up grubs and break open bark and those kind of things. They don't have the claw structure of something like a honey badger that is able to do those kind of things, and so I think it'll be a little tough for him to be able to get to that. What you can try and go after is also things like terrapins, tortoises, catfish, monitor lizards, birds, and then the odd, big antelope in between that he might be able to luckily enough get to. That would probably be his best bet. And then, like I say, also just scavenging off any possible potential kills that might be around. So anything like a buffalo kill that's maybe left and there's still a bit of nutrients, so almost fulfill the same role as what a group of hyenas would fill, and just try and kind of get into that. The problem with that is that often there's either lions around or there's going to be hyenas, and in his state that he is in now, he's not going to really be too much of competition for hyenas. They will be able to chase him off quite quickly. So I think his best bet is just to try and find smaller food items, try and get things like scrub hares and various other small animals like that, and just try and kind of keep getting nutrients, and then also just try and bump into the odd leopard for a scavenged meal from time to time. Scarlett, you're wondering if leopards his age usually pass away from illness or predation. I think it's probably about a 50-50 split, Scarlett. So you'd probably find a number of them do get killed by predators, so in the form of lions or hyenas or other male leopards. But a lot of them would also suffer from, the breakdown of the organs. So you might find some of them have TB, where they'll get lesions in their lungs. Some of them might get infections from hunting. Things like porcupines, quills go into their coats and they get that. So there's a number of different things that can happen to them. So it's probably a 50-50 split between a sort of a body breakdown and a predation event. So it depends on that. There's also, of course, there could be a situation where they fight, and with another leopard and they get injured, and then it's just basically a starvation that takes place rather than anything else. So we'll see. I mean, there's been leopards this year, or last year should I say, that have passed away and left us, that were in far better condition that Mvula was in, and had also other issues and had enlarged livers and those kind of things. So those things also do happen from time to time, but hopefully he'll fight back from this. Hopefully he'll get stronger and he'll get food in his belly and he'll start to look a little bit better in the coming weeks. So I hold out hope for him. He's such a clever leopard and he's survived so much so far that I think he knows there's a couple of tricks and up his sleeve that he can hopefully get himself back into a bit better condition than he is now. I wonder if it's maybe because he just went on such a long jaunt all over the place, and what triggered that I'm not quite sure, but he ended up going all the way down to Mala Mala and back, and I wonder if that sort of movement just took it out of him a bit. Maybe had he prior to that sort of stayed in this area, maybe he would have been in better condition. I'm not sure. It could also be the fact that there's just too many male leopards here at the moment, that he's just got so much competition that he just can't keep up with all of these other males, and he's really struggling to try and find a place to actually keep his food because he gets sort of pushed out quite quickly. Now, Philip, you're wondering if Tingana is not much younger than Mvula. I think this is the question. I've forgotten now because I was thinking of something else, but would he be able to age as quickly as Mvula has? So yes, very likely. I mean, if Tingana starts to get pushed out, starts to become nomadic, and he starts to kind of unfortunately be pushed out of his area that he knows, he could very well end up looking exactly like Mvula or behaving like Mvula. The thing about Mvula is it's very different to any of the other male leopards that I've known that have been ousted. Most of the other male leopards that I've seen that have been ousted have moved out of the area completely. They've ended up going into other places. So if you think of the Kashan male, was ousted from Londolozi, Singita and the west, and then ended up going all the way down to Sabi Sabi. The Sand River male, same thing, from Londolozi down to Sabi Sabi and Lion Sands area. So there's a number of those different males that have all been ousted, that have been pushed off and kind of left, and because they've then left, they've run themselves in, or they've run into other things and other problems, and they've kind of gotten sort of killed quite quickly, although I suppose Sand River male lasted for quite some time. But with Tingana, who knows? It's possible. I mean, Tingana could go from looking excellent to bad in a short space of time. He's not that much younger, as far as we know, than Mvula is, and so a year is a long time, and who knows what's going to be going on in a year's time with with Tingana. We don't know. We saw the other day he had a very bad limp, but he still managed to come out of it, and he looks as strong as ever now. So Mvula's looked like this before, and he's managed to bounce back from it, and he's managed to try and get a situation where he's looking healthier and fitter. So you never know with them, but yes, it's very possible. You decided that you're a little bit tired of lying that way, so he's now turned the opposite way and back to the way that we were just now. So hopefully the sun being out is what's causing him to get a little bit uncomfortable, and that he'll start to get up and move. And while we sit and wait, Steve is apparently continuing his feathered theme for the day, but he's got something that I think Mvula would love to be eating right now. Well, we can try and chat to him. He seems as though he's a little unresponsive today, since we've been with him most of the afternoon and he hasn't replied yet, but I wonder what he's dreaming of. Maybe he's dreaming of a big impala carcass or something like that, or maybe he's dreaming of the good old days when you...
Light is getting really, really nice for the camera. Nice for some shots. If you are a photographer out there, this is definitely one of the better times of day for those pictures. And so we're going to carry on towards Chitwa. We're just here. We're going to see maybe the hippos, see if anything else is moving down there. See what else we can come up with. It is a lovely afternoon. Senzo and I are enjoying ourselves thoroughly. We've investigated Chitwa quite nicely, and we're having some fun. So I believe Mvula is still sleeping, but let's send you to Trist, who can maybe talk to you about what leopards are doing. Maybe he can tell you what he's dreaming.
Well, we can try and chat to him. He seems as though he's a... Indeed I do. He's still very sleepy, and I don't know how he's sleeping the way he is. His head is kind of like bent over down a sort of slope, and he's kind of rounded off on top of a little bump there, which can't be super comfy. But the light is at the most perfect point right now. So if he's going to get up and give us a show, it would be amazing if he did it at this moment, because it's kind of being filtered a little bit by the clouds, and there's this beautiful gold hue that is just kind of coming through, and particularly with the greenery that we've gotten over the last little bit because of the rain, is kind of reflecting that light all over the place, and it is absolutely beautiful out here. So I'm hoping that he decides to get up and move. It'll just be so nice to watch him kind of go through some golden lit grass and kind of see him going along his way, and maybe down even onto a road, so we can see him kind of striding down one of the roads of Djuma again. But at this stage, he's still very, very sleepy. He's still not really moving too much. There's also a breeze that's picked up now, which means that you'll probably find the insects are not going to bother him too much. He's also not going to be worried about heat now. It's cooling down very quickly. In fact, the breeze is quite cold, so I don't think we're going to see a situation where he's going to start moving really anytime soon. There's no reason for it anyway. But look at those ears. You can see how many nicks and cuts they are. He always has had quite tatty ears, so even from the beginning, you know, when I first started to see him as a 5-6-year-old male, he was already had a few cuts and scrapes, but they've definitely gotten a lot more tatty. You can actually see one or two of those biting flies that are busy crawling around on the back side of that ear and just kind of feeding off little bits there and making themselves a bit of a nuisance, and he'll flick them off every now and then when they get it too irritating. You also notice then they're on the back of the ear, it's not as irritating. It's when they go down into the ear itself, I think that's when he really gets kind of quite frustrated by it, and that's when the ear flicks itself. But imagine all the stories those ears could tell, and all the sort of insect life that has been on those ears. Imagine how many different sets of legs of flies and ticks have been on that ear and have made a landing, much like the moon landings that people talk about. I mean, I wonder how many have been on there. It would be interesting to know how many sets of feet have stepped on the ear of Mvula. Now there's a car that's about to start, so hopefully that's going to mean Mvula is going to pop his head up and hopefully give us something to look at, but I don't know if he will. The vehicle that's here is a very quiet vehicle. Now that might sound very odd, but we get different types of vehicles out here, and there's one that is a petrol vehicle much like ours, and so they are much more quiet, and maybe that will mean that Mvula will stay sleeping. Although I see now they've decided they're not going to start their vehicle, so maybe we won't see him wake up. That's all. Shame, boy. He's definitely slowed his breathing rate down a little bit as well, so he's not as hot as much. So, Turtle Trekken and your niece Lily, you wanting to know what is the average age of a male leopard? Well, generally, I mean, it's very seldom that it's male leopards live past 14 years old, so most of them are around 12. That's the average age, generally in the Sabi Sands, 12, 13, so he's about that. And the reason why is because of this is what we've discussed pretty much the whole afternoon, is that they get thrown out of a territory, they come across a number of other males, a number of hyenas and lions as they try and be nomadic, and it makes life a little bit difficult. It's also, you know, they don't have then favorite hunting grounds or, you know, areas where there's water, and so they have to move a lot more to find food and water, because the ideal territories are all occupied by younger individuals, and that means that they put a lot more strain on their body. Plus, as they get older, things just don't work as well as they used to, and they're not able to be as fast and those kind of things. And so when they reach about 12 years old, generally they've been ousted by younger sort of 5-6-year-old males, and either they've caught an injury from it, or they now have to go and search for a lot more stuff, and that's why they end up in this condition, and why their lifespan is a lot shorter than the females. The females tend not to have as much competition in terms of fighting for territories, and they don't tend to come to blows nearly as easily. It's been kind of thrown that book right out the window. A lot of our females last year that disappeared, none of them were at the average age that they should be. So normally females around 14 to 15 years old is when they start disappearing, but last year most of them were disappearing at around sort of 12. So it was a little bit of a shock to see some of our really kind of well-known females to go last year, particularly Salesh and Karula. You know, both of them kind of disappeared at an age where we thought we still had a few more years with them. So it's about 12 years old is kind of, I suppose, the general now for the Sabi Sands, both male and female, over the last year. And hopefully he'll be an enigma and will come back from it and last and go well into 14, 15 like the Campan male. And there's been others before him that have also done that. that. So hopefully he'll be one of those that gets into those ages. But it's hard to see him lasting another 3-4 years when he's in condition like this. I don't know if this will be his last year. Who knows? Maybe I'm going to be proven wrong. Like I said, I've seen him in condition like this before, and he's bounced back from it. Christine, you're wondering if he's sleeping longer than usual because he's a bit older? Debatable. Maybe. I mean, maybe he's tired, his joints and things are a little bit sore, and he just can't really kind of get around as much. It's possible. But I've seen Tingana sleep like this. I've seen Anderson sleep like, well, maybe not Anderson. Anderson's a bit of an enigma when it comes to these things. He just goes all over the place and moves around. We know Hosanna the other afternoon when it was hot, he was also sleeping. So it depends a lot on weather conditions. It depends on what's going on around them. At this stage, he doesn't have any food source that he can go and chase right near him. It's also been quite warm this afternoon, and so he's just been resting. I'm sure tonight he will move around and he will go through a situation where he's able to sort of try and find some sort of a food item and move around a lot more. But maybe he's older, he will rest a little bit more. We saw with Tingana when he was a bit under the weather, and so when Tingana had that sore paw, he spent almost 5 days on Djuma, and we found him every single day. And so they do rest up a little bit when they're a little bit under the weather, and you find that they then try and find somewhere just to take it easy. Right, Mvula looks as though he's gotten himself into a place where he's going to sleep even longer and take it very easy. So while we kind of sit here and hope that he'll give us one last show and pop his head up, let's go back across to Steve, who I believe is slowly starting to meander his way back to camp. Well, look at that. Mvula has obviously realized that it's that time where he now needs to poke up his head and have a little look around, and hopefully he'll give us one last kind of stare over his shoulder, and we can get those beautiful aqua-colored eyes reflecting in the golden light. There's a way of kind of just finishing up our day. There's another vehicle that's just joined, and so maybe that's why he popped up his head. I was hoping that he would, and maybe we'll see him decide to yawn and stand up. It would be nice if that was the case, but he's just kind of sitting at this stage, just watching the ongoings and listening to what's happening. But he's still got a serious set of shoulders and neck on him. As much as the rest of his body doesn't look good, his head and neck area is still massive, and he might not appear to be in his best condition, and he's past his heyday, but he is still a big animal, and he's certainly still got some sort of atmosphere about him that commands respect, and there's a wisdom and a sort of warrior look to him that is difficult not to appreciate. You can imagine all the things that it must take to be a dominant male leopard for as long as he was. He's been around, almost 13 years. To survive out here every single day is a struggle, and so for him to have managed that is always a special thing. And when you see him sitting like that, when he's up and regal, and like we had him when we first got him in the afternoon on that termite mound, he's just looks as warrior-like as you could ever imagine from a male leopard. So hopefully he's going to get up, and he looks as though he might. Are you going to turn to face us, boy, for one last time? Well done, good guy. But look at that, he's still a beautiful individual, and now that the light has become a little more even, you can see how incredible those eyes are. When he was younger, he had the most special eyes, very kind of bluish color, and there you can just see a little bit of that light color as he looks off into the distance, and his long eyelashes. It's not every day that you get to see the eyelashes on a male leopard. And look at the nose as well. The nose is working incredibly hard as he tries to pick up whatever is on the breeze. Right, unfortunately though, it's that time of the day where we are going to be heading home, and we're going to be starting to get back to camp. It's been an absolutely wonderful afternoon to spend it, and for us to have Mvula just to turn like that in the last little bit is almost just as good as we could ever ask for in this golden light. So thoroughly enjoyed my afternoon with Mvula, and I'm sure it's been a wonderful afternoon for all of you, with all of the things in the Mara, and Steve with all his birds, and Elephant, and Mvula, our old boy. So from all of us, it's been an absolute pleasure having you, and we hope to see you all tomorrow morning on our sunrise safari.